This is the story of a man who transformed his home into a museum celebrating life and death.
You know, it's who I am, it's where I've been, and sometimes where I'm going.
In the midst of London's drab greys, an explosion of color.
You really get the feeling of somebody saying, I'm alive, and this is what it's like.
I wanted to make something that evoked that horrible feeling of losing my dad.
Welcome to the House of Dreams. In a seemingly ordinary South London neighborhood, one house-turned-museum stands out amidst the gloom. A corridor whose walls are lined with poems leads to 3 unique rooms and a garden, all of which are odes to life, death, and kitsch.
My name is Stephen Wright. I am the creator of the House of Dreams Museum. I want to create a world all of my own that I can hide in, and that's what I'm doing.
I'm Michael Vaughan. I'm Stephen's partner. Friends asked me what Stephen's house was like, and I used to say, well, imagine that you were having a hallucinogenic experience in a Mexican sweet shop that was invaded by Irish plaster saints while they filmed a Bollywood movie, and you are just about getting a kind of taste of what this house is like. And I could see people thinking, no, he's exaggerating. And then when they came round, they went, oh my God, you weren't exaggerating at all.
Oh, wow. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's a fantasy. It's a way of dealing with life. I hide behind a wall, and I create a world that I feel comfortable in. This is more recent. The front room, which overlooks the garden, where we have the spirit sculptures, which are about bereavement, most of them, and lots of dolls in here, disabled dolls, things from Haiti in here, voodoo dolls. There's also another little space when you come into the front door, through the passageway. There's lots of objects from my childhood in the hall. And for me, that's the most intense area within the house there, and one of my favourite areas too. The middle room, we then go into the studio that was. I mean, the back of the house is the studio, but there's also another room now emerging there, which I'm sort of building now, really.
Papier-mâché sculptures, ceramics, fabrics, souvenirs unearthed at flea markets. Each object in this colourful chaos has its history.
Well, everything is here for a reason. Everything has an energy. That's why it's here. It's not to fill a space. It's to do with a memory. It's to do with a location that means a lot to me.
My name's John Mazels. I'm the publisher and editor of Royal Vision magazine. None of the materials are bought. They're not new. They're just recycled old things, rubbish, broken crockery, dolls. Amazing.
All of the dolls have a disability in this house. This is a skin condition. This was bought from Hastings in Sussex because nobody else wants them. And I think they're beautifully ugly, so they need to come and live here. You know, what is beauty, what is ugliness? I don't know. So they're here. This doll here needed to come and live here. Nobody wanted to buy it in the market, but I did, because this is a home for disabled dolls, and I love it.
As the years go by, they've become a complete work of art. You actually walk inside. It's incredible.
Most of the people who come here select to come here because they're looking for something in their own lives. And I think this house gives them approval to go ahead and do it in some way, as I give myself approval to do it.
I like how it shines and very glittery.
My name's Jan Flavel, and I've been a very good friend of Steve's for nearly 10 years now. I think most people find it quite overwhelming. It's just so vibrant, and it's so intense, and it's so colourful. You don't know what to expect when somebody invites you to their house for the first time, do you? Kind of don't expect this.
This is all about spirit and soul, really. So I want to be surrounded by things that mean a lot to me, that move me, that excite me, that are powerful. So that's why they're here.
There are so many themes in Steve's work. You really get the feeling of somebody saying, I'm alive, and this is what it's like, you know?
One girl, schoolgirl, she was probably about 14, 15. She really didn't get what this house was about, which is fine, because not everyone's going to get it. And she was mesmerised by... She thought, oh, this is horrible. She said, it's horrible. She said, why have you done this to your house? And I thought, well, yes, maybe it is horrible to some people. It's not a problem.
I like the colours and I like the shapes. I like the way you put jewellery around the place and put pens.
Oh, I was amazed when I came in. I thought it was really, really wonderful. I mean, it's a good name, House of Dreams. It's like a dreamlike quality when you see it, without doubt, yeah.
The house, a dream for some, a nightmare for others, leaves no one indifferent. Stephen Wright worked on his House of Dreams for 11 years before finally opening its doors to the public.
I like things to be awkward for people, you see. Why should they have it easy? It's not easy for me, so why should I make it easy? I think it's part of the experience of being here.
With 8 million people, a booming economy, and rich cultural life, London has established itself as one of the most dynamic of the world capitals. The monarchy and ancient heritage exist peacefully with the city's growing counterculture, creating an interesting blend. South of the Thames, in the quiet neighborhood of East Dulwich, Stephen Wright took up residence.
East Dulwich is in South London. It's about 5 or 6 miles away from the centre, although actually it feels like the countryside sometimes. It's quite green, fairly quiet. There isn't a tube here, which is wonderful. It's changed a lot over the years. It's rather nice. It's safe for London. It feels safe. It's a rather useful place to live, to work, because nobody... It's not friendly. I wouldn't say it's friendly, so people leave you alone to get on with your life, really. There's no interference in it, you know, with anything, which is really good. It's healthy. Living in London does have its advantages. There are enough people living here who have a sophistication of understanding as to what the House of Dreams is about. I escape from where I'm living in my museum. It's my way of dealing with where I'm living. It's equally very difficult because I feel like I'm living in a capitalist environment that is all about money. So it's a combination of struggle and sending out a message. There is a sign in my house that says, spiritually, I gave up on London years ago, and I did. When I first moved here, about 32, 33 years ago, it was quite a poor to average sort of area, really, and it was much more interesting in those days, I have to say, because all, you know, the local characters who lived here then. Now it's become affluent.
Stephen Wright was born in 1954 in Shevington, a small village in northwest England, located 350 miles or 560 kilometers from London. A quiet place for so explosive an artist.
We first met Stephen when he was a 14-year-old schoolboy living in the village and going to the high school about half a mile up the road from where we live. He was very artistic.
Very artistic, very quiet.
Yeah.
Very quiet, shy.
Yeah. Yes.
Very shy boy.
Yeah.
And very home-orientated.
And thought a lot of his parents.
Very much.
My parents, all the way through their lives, up to, you know, the end, really, really interested in what I was doing, always wanted me to succeed on my own terms, whatever that was.
I went to see Mr. and Mrs. Wright for some reason. Stephen would be about 16.
Yeah, he was still at high school, I think, just about at the end of it.
He was sitting at an old sewing machine with pieces of plastic and coloured sand, and filling the pieces of plastic with coloured sand and machining them into different shaped buttons.
As an only child, making art, being creative, it was company, really.
And thought at the time that he was going to go much further with his art.
Yeah, You could probably say it was the start
Yes,
on the road to the House of
yes.
Dreams.
Yes, it probably was.
Yeah.
That was my first memory of Stephen.
The colour and the pattern and putting things together was, you know, was my, well, the brother and sister I never had.
Perhaps a lot of people from Shavington would not understand in any way Stephen or his work. They would have no understanding of it.
Or appreciation, really.
They'd just, as I say to him, they'd just think, weird.
Yeah.
Just weird.
My upbringing was very free and loose. We didn't have an awful lot of money. Certainly we didn't. My parents, they worked hard all of their lives, and they didn't want me to have the same sort of life as they had. They wanted me to follow my dream, which is what this house is about. And they supported me 101% all the way through their lives. They were marvellous.
I think that the work earlier was a little bit more conventional work.
Yes, not exactly conventional, but
not like
compared with his later work.
It has gone more bizarre as the years have gone by.
When I was at school, I went to secondary school. I was told I was stupid, and I knew I wasn't stupid. I knew I had skills, and I wanted to pursue who I was through education and through the rest of my life, really, which is what I've been doing. So managed to get all the O-levels and A-levels from lowly secondary school, and then went to university at Liverpool and Manchester. I studied textiles, printed textiles, with a bit of fashion, and moved down to London and then set up a business producing fabric.
Then Stephen met Donald, the man who would become his partner in life and in creation.
Donald was a maker. He used his hands. He was a costume maker for West End shows. Very skillful, far more skillful than I am with certain things, that's for sure. Structure, he was really good with structure.
And he and Donald used to come to see Mr. and Mrs. Wright. Picture the scene of a relatively small Cheshire village.
Yes, a conservative with a small C, not politically, but...
And two chaps going out for a walk in the lane, dressed in black from head to foot, big boots, long black coats, shaved head in Stephen's case. Yes, they have stood out. I mean, they did stand out.
Wouldn't particularly catch a second glance in London, but in a small Cheshire working-class village, yes.
Very much so.
We were sitting in the winter in front of the fireplace having, a glass of wine and thinking, well, what should we do? What would be interesting to do? And we thought, oh, we'll sort of build an environment which is half installation, half shop.
But fate would soon catch up with the creative duo and jeopardize their dreams.
The house became a museum because we wanted to work on something together that was substantial, really. And I knew at the time when we started, the museum, because of his illness, that he wouldn't be doing it forever.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
This is the very first piece that went on the floor here.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of, when I was working with Donald, my partner, who was alive then, and then we sort of moved outwards here, up the walls.
Yeah.
And then he passed away, and then I thought, am I going to continue with this? What am I going to do with it, the whole project? And I just woke up one morning, I thought, I need to do this for me.
Yeah.
I need to do it for me.
In 2003, while the House of Dreams was just beginning to take shape, Stephen Wright's spouse, Donald, lost his fight with Evans syndrome, a rare disease that attacks the immune system.
Donald was my partner for 25 years. He had a condition called Evans syndrome, which affects the immune system, makes it weak. So when you know, if you, I mean, he didn't have a cold, he had pneumonia. Everything was extreme. And the illness was always part of our relationship, really, because Donald was ill for possibly 20 years. Sort of over the years became worse, bit by bit, very, very slowly.
Well, gosh, well, Donald was a really nice guy. And lots of times he was in hospital. Donald tolerated all this very well.
He was very brave. He never, ever, ever, ever complained about it once to me. There was a, you know, a spiritual connection. I mean, he was 20 years older than me. So, not that I ever thought about that. I mean, you know, that's how it was, but I mean, that wasn't important to me. He was also an old soul, and I connected with his old soulness because I'm also an old soul. He was amazing how, you know, he dealt with it over the years, really, and I sort of learned a lot about human spirit from him in that way.
So, when you go through things like that with people, you get very close.
The very next year, fate struck again.
I went home to my parents in the north of England. That was probably one of the worst Christmases we've ever had, really. And then my father died in the August of the following year. He was 92.
It was a very traumatic time for Stephen, and the whole episode was traumatic.
Yeah. And then, because his mum was... They were, I suppose, mutually supportive, really, he and his mum.
Yes.
Because Stephen obviously supported his mum, but she very much supported him in his work, and she used to come down, this quite elderly lady by that time, come down on her own on the train to London, and Stephen would take her around out for a meal, take her to different places.
And then she died in the March of the following year. So it was one funeral after another, really.
It was very hard for Stephen because he didn't have siblings, so he was on his own, and he really adored his parents. He really did.
It was really difficult because I was clearing 2 separate houses on my own with no help from anyone. Interesting how strong you can be, actually, you know, because there was no help, so I had to do it on my own.
To overcome his grief, Stephen took refuge in his work.
In a way, it was an inspiration for some of his work as well, although it was a very sad time for him. It did inspire some of his work.
I think he used a lot of his work
channeled
to
it.
get him through the sadness of losing his dad and Donald. And his work did reflect that very strongly, didn't it?
Yeah.
At that time. It was almost like a cleansing process for Stephen, wasn't it? Yeah. Very much so.
I was quite intrigued with this half elephant, half bride.
You know, because I lost a partner, I also lost my parents within 18 months. So that was pretty awful, really, actually. And as an only child as well, it was very difficult to deal with. So all of these sculptures actually relate to that experience.
Really?
I think that the work did change, don't you?
Yeah, and I think it turned him naturally inwards for a while.
So I'm using my mum's clothes here, her, you know, her beads.
This is your mother's dress?
It is.
Right.
And the beads,
yes,
and so on. But then here, it's a combination of experiences. When Donald was ill, I mean, I was a carer for him, and he had a rare skin condition, and I used to put chamomile lotion all over his face. This actually did recreate how his face was looking at the time, and it was pretty scary, really. So I wanted to go there, you know, go back to that experience.
Yes.
So it's a combination of the two.
So it's a
people, really.
total therapeutic experience then, doing.
Well, I think the house is.
The whole house is
I think
therapeutic
so.
experience.
I think so. Yeah.
And I think that has helped Stephen tremendously to get through what was a very difficult time. Yeah, Donald was lovely.
Having lost Donald and then his dad and then his mum, it was just really hard. So we did a lot of phoning and seeing each other and stuff like that. And then a friend of mine who was Lizzie, who'd come to the shop with me in the first place, then she was ill, so we went through all of that as well. You know, they were hard times.
Through good times and bad, and despite all the obstacles, Stephen Wright is committed to scouring flea markets to find new items for his museum. Today, he takes us to his favorite London location, the Deptford Market.
In the summer, I usually wake up about 4 o'clock, 4:30, because it's light and I want to start work. And off I go, really. In the winter, it's sort of 6 o'clock, 6:30. But early bird in the summer, certainly.
Over the last 7 years, I've had to get used to the idea of getting up at 5:30, 6 o'clock. Because right at the very beginning, if I didn't, Stevie used to pound the pillow next to my head.
And I say, are you awake? Are you awake, Michael? Yeah, are you awake? Oh, look at these over here. How much is she?
It's about 15 to you. Give me a fiver.
You're a star, I'll have it.
OK.
Thank
Carry
you.
on.
Stevie came back to the house with a whole great bag full of curlers with hair on them. And my first reaction was to say, yeah, you want to get those in a bit of bleach. But that's the bit he likes. He likes the human aspect of it that was always on the curlers.
It's the life. It's, you know, it's the life of what they are. I mean, if you if you bleach them or you wash them, you know, you're washing away the life of what they are. And, you know, the person who wore them, and that's what's important to me. I don't know who they are. That actually doesn't matter, but it's the human involvement in hair rollers that I like. I like the hairs.
And there's quite a lot of human involvement on this market.
Yes, indeed. In England, it's all sanitised apart from this market in London. So I come here because it's just brought here, it's dumped here on the floor, and I can root through all the crap and all, you know, everybody else's DNA, and I love it.
5 of them, 60 quid.
5 for 60 quid.
I remember Steve bought some dolls off me possibly about 2 years ago. He seems to like the old sort of rosebud 1950s, 60s, early plastics. I don't know what he does with them. I think he sticks bloody nails in them and paints them up. I'm not sure. I've got to go and have a look one day.
So this one's 15 if I just have one?
Buy one, yes.
I have this.
OK, right.
Well, it makes no odds to me because I collect antique dolls. So, to me, men buying dolls is normal. So, I'm probably the worst person to ask.
I bought this head because I like the residue that's on the face. I'm not going to wash it. I like all of this. I'm going to leave the price on. I just leave it as it is because it's had a life and that's why it should come to the House of Dreams. Well, I bought some weird things over the years, but I think the one that I liked the most was a false leg that I bought from Wimbledon maybe a year ago or something.
Yes, I found the leg. And the minute I saw it, I thought, I know who's going to buy that leg.
Me.
It was you, yeah.
Love it.
One thing I do like about Steve is that he will, you know, if I sort of have an idea or something, he'll say, oh, that's a great idea. I could incorporate that.
Yeah, and we have managed to explore the crap of Europe over the years.
That's true.
He is willing to take, as you can see, he'll take and assimilate influences and ideas from everywhere and turn it into his own thing.
I usually come on a Wednesday to this flea market, sometimes on a Saturday, usually on a Wednesday. You know, there's lots of good stuff here, really. Personal effects, which I like. I'm interested in birth certificates, all those sort of things, wills.
We can talk about art forever. We can talk about relationships and how we feel and how they're going badly or how they're going well. But we do talk about the work, but, I mean, Steve is his own man.
Discussing his findings is part of his creative process.
Is it? And what, so you can't see my face?
No, it gives you a certain, I don't know what.
Oh, okay.
Je ne sais quoi.
Oh, okay.
I suppose my role has been talking, really, talking through problems, talking through anxieties, laughing, being ridiculous, all the things that people have in a deep friendship, you know, being honest, I think is the main thing, being really honest with each other.
My notebook has lots of writing about conversations that I hear on the bus, or my thoughts about life, or, you know, my own life, or other people's lives, about society, all sorts of things. I wrote, "Get away from me with all your negative shit." So I'm going to write a board to commemorate that day.
Because I've never seen your sketchbooks. Obviously,
No,
they're very
I hide
private.
them.
It's like a diary, a personal
I hide
diary.
them. I don't show them to Michael
yeah,
either.
You keep them close to your chest.
That's
Obviously.
my business.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I open the pages, and then
Yeah.
you know I make what I need to make from the sketchbook.
Just now, I saw your costume hanging in your very beautiful bedroom.
It's got a life of its own.
I
isn't
know.
it?
And then when I went to put the soup in the fridge, I saw some heads that could go with that costume, I suspect.
I think they might very well go with that costume.
Naturally, there are the dismembered dolls, an overabundance of colors, and thousands of trinkets. But among this multitude of disparate objects, strange characters inhabit Wright's museum.
There are lots of secrets within this house that only I know about, which includes actually inside the sculptures, there are objects inside these sculptures. Nobody knows what they are, only me. When I was sorting through my mum's things when she passed on, I found a purse with light bulbs and little bits of silver paper in there. I don't know what these were saved for. I have no idea. I like the smell. And then I like the fact that you can trap the memory within that purse. And then I attach it to the sculpture and I show that to people who I think are interested, yes. This is my mum's jumper and her blouse, because when I sorted through her clothes, you know, you actually find out about the people as well. You know, she had lots of safety pins on the inside of her clothes everywhere.
Why do you think she did that?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Just somewhere safe to keep them all?
Maybe, in case she needed them for something.
Well, it's like you're capturing the memories, aren't you? You're actually making them physical.
And you know, recreating something out of a, you know, a sad experience, really. And hopefully making something joyful in some way. My father worked with his hands. My mother was a home help. She worked with her hands, you know, she'd wash floors, you know, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I work with my hands. I'm an artist, but I work with my hands. That's a really important part of what this house and my work is about. Handling the materials, feeling the textures, smelling things, getting the feeling of things on my hands and under my nails. I like my nails to be dirty through hard work. I like to work hard, physically.
No, I just wondered how long does it take to do the whole thing? You know,
about 3 or 4 weeks.
It's quite a long time then, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
This is sort of the transition between making Elvis, who is out there, who is all papier-mâché and really light. Because when I do exhibitions and things, these are so heavy to maul around.
Yeah.
And I do have a relationship with them. I mean, I don't go and hug them every night, but they are something that I feel very strongly about. I have to look after them. I'm their daddy or their uncle or something. Well, I don't always understand everything about this house, and that's up to other people to make their own opinions, really, about it. But certainly the dolls and the sculptures, I think, are comfort objects.
The House of Dreams is an ongoing project, and its creator is forever looking for new and original materials.
So, John, these are some of the death certificates and birth certificates
How incredible. Where do you get these from?
collect. These are from Deptford Market.
So these are...
£1 each.
So what happens? Do the families throw them away then?
Yes, they do. I mean, really, it's just going through, you know,
so these are real people's lives,
they
aren't they? You know.
Which I find really fascinating.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of stuff. I mean, there's a book up here with births and deaths and stuff. It's all part of what this house is about, really. I am using colour now to evoke moods and feelings. So I don't just use a wonderful orange and a yellow and put them together because I like them. So colour also has to have an emotion with it now too for me. It's not just making something pretty.
So what is this made of?
Chicken wire.
So you've got inside this chicken wire?
Yes.
With a wooden frame or something like that?
And then it's stuffed with newspapers, and then you can start to, just shape it.
Yes.
And then you start to decorate it from there, really.
So is this plaster you put in then? Or?
It's mostly grout, and there is some white cement as well here and there.
He just sort of gets in touch with his subconscious and it just lets it all out. I'm always trying to do it for myself, but I can't do it in the way Steve does it because he's just, I think, probably more honest than I am.
This is certainly about loss, and when Donald died, this was written half an hour after he died.
Really? Yeah.
And this is how it felt, and this is how it was, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
But, I felt a need to, to record the situation, really.
Yes.
And also, I mean, there's lots of stuff about my childhood.
I think it adds a lot to the whole place. I mean, it makes it not only an artwork, but a powerful personal statement as well, doesn't it? Because
it's very
involved
honest.
in your whole life.
I mean, it's very honest. I mean, it's, it's who I am, it's where I've been, and sometimes where I'm going, I'm writing about too.
For Stephen Wright, only a thin line separates life and death, and the hardships he's encountered have fueled his creative passions. No regrets, no bitterness, and a head full of colors.
So the process for me, of dealing with grief is through the action of making something, because the angst and the upset goes into the object that you're, that you're making in front of you. So you're actually washing your hands through the process of making the creatures, really. Some of this work I did with Donald round about the year 2001, 2, 3, something like that. And it's quite interesting when you work with someone else how you, negotiate things more. I now work on my own, and that actually reflects my personality too. So yes, this is earlier work in here with the arches, quite a lot of mosaic work in here. In 1998, when I began working with Donald, it was a very different journey. I didn't think that it would end so quickly, that experience of working with him on the House of Dreams Museum. From there on in, I took over the reins of wanting to explore who Stephen Wright is.
Yeah, some of the really interesting pieces I saw here are he goes to Mexico a lot to collect religious sort of figurines and things like this of the Virgin Mary, and then he's also got pictures of Jesus, Krishna, Mao, and things like that, and Elvis and so on. These are real powerful characters. It's not just religion, it's the power behind it, I think.
England and death, well, it isn't really spoken of, is it? In England, it's almost apologetic, the whole experience. Let's keep it low-key, let's not go overboard with, the whole thing, really. Whereas in Mexico, the Day of the Dead, of course, as we all know, is a celebration of the person who has passed on, and that's how I think it should be.
This is quite interesting. This house is a combination between a huge collection of strange and kitsch objects and actual creating something with his hands. So he's combined the two. Well, some people only just collect, and some people only just make. But he's combined the two things together in a very interesting way.
This is a long journey. When I was a designer, I would produce a design collection in a month with a theme that I would set myself, which could be natural or kitsch or this or that or whatever it is. So with that mindset, I would then produce a design collection, had to be finished in a month, and then it would be produced, and then it would be marketed, and it would be out there, and that's fine. It's taken me a while to adjust to the long journey, because this is not produced in a month. This is produced in 20, 30, 40 years.
This house is an interesting example, and we talked to Stephen about his motives behind it. And a lot of it was due to the death of his parents, all sorts of personal things, and he was coping with it.
It's a different journey. I like the long journey. I like the challenge of making things hard for myself.
So art for him is something more than just creating something to show, to exhibit. It's something much more deep and personal.
I want to go back to child. I think we said this the other day. You start as a child. I want to end as a child and get rid of all of the shit in the middle and actually end up at a point where I am totally instinctive. And I am beginning to get there. It's fabulous.
After publishing a book on the House of Dreams in 2013, Stephen Wright is working on a new project. This time, he takes the stage as if he'd become a character in his museum. Not for the faint of heart.
Really, the costumes have their origins in the later artwork that you have around you here. This sort of thing where I'm creating characters and I'm wanting to lift them from a 2D format to actually to have form and to be characters. So that's really what the costumes are about. Working with Michael on them, we started with the book. Michael did all the photographs for the House of Dreams book, and that worked really well.
It's a way of taking the work and recording it.
Yeah, so it goes from 2D into a costume which is 3D, into a book which is 2D.
Just a little bit, so they're not quite as... That's it. That's it.
I dream about the spirits. So then, I get up in the morning, I do some sketches of what I've been dreaming about, and then I want to make the costumes. They're a sort of presence, really. It's also exploring the characters that are in my head, wanting to make them come alive. So it's early days, it's sort of like giving birth.
And I'm a kind of midwife.
Well, you're doing a good job.
Well, I'm photographing the birth. Yeah.
Ah, yeah. That's a good title for a book. Photographing the birth.
For Stephen Wright, the House of Dreams is the work of a lifetime. It occupies his dreams, his waking moments, and his leisure time. His family and friends recognize his passion and dedication.
If I think of Steve as a person and who he is, he's somebody who feels things really deeply and is prepared to take risks and really throws himself 100% into life and into his experiences. I mean, as you can see, he doesn't do anything by halves. He gives a great deal. And he expects a lot back as well. So I think he's just a very passionate person. And, life, he embraces all of life. He's not intimidated by anything in life. He'll accept it and use it and take it in. I think he's a really inspiring person to know.
I think that the House of Dreams and its location is in the perfect place.
Yeah, although, if you look at... See, we live in... Our house is, Edwardian. And I could see Stephen creating it in our house.
But I don't think it would have the same impact.
Mortality is a central theme of Stephen's work, but for the future, he hopes the House of Dreams will be eternal.
It's important to me, if I'm spending all of my life creating a museum which has an important message, it's important to me that it is preserved and looked after. So in my will, I have left it to National Trust to look after, and hopefully they will respect my wishes. My mum's ashes are in the garden, and my dad's hair is in the garden. They're both together. I don't want to be with them. I probably would want to build something in the garden where my ashes go. I think that they should be within the space, within the whole House of Dreams somewhere.
I guess I'd like to see for Stephen that it grows, well, it is growing, and then it grows some more, and that it's appreciated, it's open.
The fact is the House of Dreams will never be finished, and that's why it's exciting, because every day it unfolds, something else unfolds, something else happens, and that's part of the excitement of it, leaving it unfinished as an artistic sort of journey is something that excites me, really. Makes you get up in the morning to do more, because there's so much more to do.
And who knows what he'll move on to, that's the thing. I mean, all these people who, they build extraordinary things, all on their own. And the perseverance and the sort of dedication to it is, I find, absolutely extraordinary. Yeah. So I hope he does that. I hope he manages that. I think he will, because he has already managed so much.
And the ultimate goal for Stephen Wright?
I want to end my life knowing that I've fulfilled as much as I could do, that I have no regrets. If I haven't been a star name, it really doesn't matter. It's not the end of the world. If I've had an interesting life for me, for my head, that is what is important to me. So all of the colour, all of these experiences, all of my creative output, which is, I do a lot of work, also the garden, the smells of the flowers, the colour, everything, is for me to feed my soul to take to somewhere else. I do look on that as an achievement, actually, to be able to fulfil your dreams.